Good evening, everyone. I am Sudhindra, Architect Sudhindra, Chairman, IIM Mysore Center, and I'm very happy to welcome you all to today's event. The new team of office bearers are very enthusiastic and excited to roll over a series of events and programs on various topics that would equally interest both the practicing architects and architects in academics. The events are proposed in a bundle of 5 different focused areas: design ponderings, panel discussion revolving around the environs of design and architecture; architecture matters, architects and their architecture; pedagogical architecture, all about architecture, academics in architecture; auxiliaries in architecture, allied fields of architecture; commerce of design, the business of architecture. Today, we kickstart our events with Design Ponderings 1, Design for Wellness, the new mantra, in association with the GSSS School of Architecture for Women and Indian Green Building Council, Mysore Chair. Recently, IIA and IGBC have signed an MOU to support green building movement, sustainable development in the field of architecture, design and planning. And with this event in Mysore, I, Chairman IIA Mysuru Center, express the same coordination with IGBC Mysuru Chair. Today's event is probably the first ever event and together with the support of the executive committee of IIA Mysuru, I wish to bring out a lot of events in future. I welcome everyone to this event. I call upon Architect Chinmay to start off with the program. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, everyone. I'm Chinmay, the faculty of GSSS School of Architecture for Women and the host of today's evening's program. I take this privilege to welcome all the distinguished guests, panelists, and participants for this interactive session. And this interactive session has been aptly termed as Design Ponderings. As it's a very collective discussion, I would request all of you to, it would be wonderful for all of you to come up with questions, and it would be very, helpful if you all have put your questions in the chat box, and I'll bring it up by the end of the presentation. And we also have time for the questions at the end. So with an array of expert panelists here, the moderator is the key to the success of the program. And we are fortunate to have with us architect Sunit Paul, who has been in the profession of architecture, academics, and architectural writing for over 40 years. He was the former editor-in-chief of the premier national magazine, Architecture Plus Design, for 24 years. Over to you, sir.
Hello. Yeah, I hope I am audible. Yeah,
yes,
a very good evening
yes,
to everybody, to my fellow panelists, to the esteemed audience of architects, professionals allied to architecture, and of course the students. First of all, I think I would really like to thank the GSSS College for Women, Mysuru, the IIA chapter, and IGBC, the Mysuru Center, for having organized this kind of event, which I think should be very exciting in these times which we are undergoing at the moment, the pandemic times, and we need to talk about certain pertinent issues. So I think thank you for having me also to be here. And as regards what Chinmay was saying, the moderator, I think I would really like this session to be an informal, knowledgeable session that we can all participate, the panelists and the participants, because at the end of the day, it's to actually have a dialogue, right? So we will proceed like that. Whoever has a question in between when we are talking, etc., after the talks, you're most welcome. The panelists to sort of interject for a short little time. Of course, time is short. Talking about design ponderings, I think this is a great initiative which has been taken up, and I believe it's a series of interactive sessions which are going to take place, and they would be talking about pertinent issues. And architecture for wellness, the new mantra. I think this is the first one and an exciting one and a very relevant one in the contemporary times that we are all undergoing. We all realize that end of the day, this is something new, especially in the Indian context. If you look at it, Vastu Shastra has always been talking about this language of wellness through the diktats that we have had in our Vedas, These are bioenergetic architecture, talking about exchange of energy between living systems. That's always been there. And the pundits now have given it a different vocabulary in the contemporary times. So also we have had architecture for wellness being talked about in our traditional houses, if we look at it from that aspect. Courtyard houses, ample light, ventilation coming in. End of the day, what is architecture for? I mean, if we can never forget that. I'm talking about the basics. It is for mankind, a well-being, for human beings to live a proper, healthy life. So this was all taken care of, but over a period of time, it's like, when we had the fire being lit at one level with two stones, but the fire did light. The basics, the light was there. And today we have evolved so much. We have lighters, etc., etc., what all we have. So it's the refinement going according to the times that architecture for wellness has changed. Otherwise, architecture has always been there for the wellness of human beings. I look at it like that. And contemporary sustainable architecture, apart from sort of really having the fantastic ratings everybody looks for, I think also goes in beyond providing comfort and efficiency for the human beings. There is so much you can talk about architecture for wellness. One very critical aspect which we all know about the wellness, architecture and art is art. Art plays a great role, I think. Art and architecture have always gone hand in hand together right from day one. And art plays a great role in bringing an aesthetic wellness, I think, to the for the observer. We talk about iconic buildings and we say, oh, wow, how pleasing it is. Our wellness also goes to interior design. You see, what are the elements we are using to get a conducive atmosphere for the inhabitants? How do you bring in a chair on their face while they are working? How do you make them more involved and happy in their environment by exploiting, by utilizing appropriately the different elements of architecture? So also is the case, I think architecture, wellness also delves a little bit more into the mental health. You see, mental environment is a very important aspect that we all need to be aware of as architects, as designers, whether it's a product or it's a building. But it definitely has some kind of a mental environment that is that we absorb. So architecture for wellness goes much beyond and there's so many other issues that I could go on, but the most relevant I feel is after these COVID times, the pandemic still on, we have had a lot of time to sort of analyze, rationalize, channelize. That where are we heading? We were in a rat race. Urbanity, thoughtlessly, sort of one after another, we were going beyond. So I think it is time to think a little bit, go back to the basics also of wellness. What is wellness architecture? And for this, I think the academicians who are here should seriously think about it, that how do you get this into the architectural education? I think it's a very important aspect that needs to be pondered over as such over a period of time. But in any case, to move forward, we have a very prominent panel of experts amongst us, and they are all specialists in their own rights, who have pursued the profession with passion and belief, which is so very, very, very important to make headway, to make a significant mark. I think it's passion that leads us on. And of course, they would be introduced by Architect Chinmay officially, but just to give a very quick glimpse as to what the proceeding is and what we are heading for, is that, of course, Professor Ramakrishna Rao, with his lifelong experience in architecture and architectural practice, would be sharing his views on architecture, education, and design for wellness. Another stalwart of the industry, of the profession, architect Nirmal Mangal, who leads Moses architectural practice in India, would shed light on wellness as a design approach, So this is going to be fascinating, I'm sure. And my friends, colleagues, we are also very, very fortunate, I must say, to have with us one of India's leading contemporary artists, thought leader, and visionary Manav Gupta. He would share an artist's perspective on the subject. Of course, to add a holistic global exposure, we have renowned architect and director of Moser Estates, Dr. Christine Bruckner from Singapore. She brings in the international approach to the theme. And of course, to get the Indian perspective, we have a dynamic young architect, Rama Lakshmi, from Samvad Design Studio, Bengaluru. You know, so and as Chinmay said, we would have a little informal, free-for-all panel sort of a discussion. The panelists are free to ask whatever questions to each other, and we take questions from the audience. And having said that, I think we could well begin the session with Honorable Professor Rao.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for giving a glimpse of the program and our panelists. So for the first panelist, we have Professor Architect B.S. Ramakrishna Rao. He is an architect with over 40 years of experience in practice and academics, and he is currently the advisor and mentor to our GSSS School of Architecture for Women. We welcome Professor Rao to talk about the architectural education and design for wellness.
A very good evening to all my co-panelists, to the participants, and all the friends who have joined in today. I thought that I would talk about something new that we have to do in our architectural education, something that we have to introduce to understand this wellness. And truly, as Sunit put it, architecture and wellness have always been together because we needed a shelter from the fury of the nature. So whatever we created was for our wellness. But so I am now looking at a new terminology, which universally we've been hearing constantly of the word retrofit, and everybody's talking about retrofitting, heritage. So I'm calling something called neofit. So my new architectural thought is that post-pandemic, assuming that such things are here to stay, because every day that we open the paper, there is one new variant, one new strain, whatever the world wants to call it. So let's say for some generation, it will be there, not on a gloomy mood, but on a very cheerful note that let's plan for it now. Because we were caught unplanned, let's plan for it. So I thought I'll put my thoughts and call them revolutionizing architectural education. From the word monofunctional, I want to start saying everything now we do must become multifunctional. Whoever imagined that one corner of our kitchen would become a lovely studio to interact with the whole world? Whoever thought that we would sit in the balcony screened from the rain and start talking to everybody else? But that is what we must do. So let us start thinking global. Let's think, what do we need to connect with the world? And today, interestingly, the world has become smaller because everybody in the world is now focused on finding a solution to this pandemic. Nothing else could unite us like this particular pandemic, because airlines, wonderful connections, networking, internet could never get everybody to think of one single thing, at least once in a day. And that is what we are doing. So we must start thinking global and design for local. When I use the word design local, means local conditions, local materials, local skills, local architects, local craftsmen. And this has to be introduced into our architectural education from day one, from now onwards. That means students must now say, when at the first year level of those who are not architects, when we begin this 5-year course, we ask them to design their own space. Now they must say a space which is my own, but it's not private anymore. Because when I'm going to go online, I'm going to share it with 100 other people. So can I look at designing my own small space to go global? So that is why I call it monofunctional to multifunctional, from thinking global to local design. And this is my first start of something which I say should be introduced into education called neofit. So what does this neofit say? Some examples have already happened in front of us. The Indian Railways have converted compartments into comfortable places for pandemic patients. Convention centers have been made into isolated units. Stadiums have been converted into isolation units. And a whole lot of other activities are there, which have been, schools have been converted into isolation units. And all these things have happened. Therefore, we now go ahead and say, from this neofit, what is the one thing that we must take forward? The one thing that we must take forward is that architectural schools must enhance design studies. Why do I use the word enhance? I've written two keywords below, illness and wellness. I'm not saying that our design curriculum currently deals with illness, but there is an illness in our design studies. We still are not able to break out of the shackles of something set a few hundred years ago. A whole lot of people may argue very soundly and say, architecture has survived. Absolutely. Not only survived, but has thrived, has gone million steps ahead from what it started. Yet, today, in spite of all these million steps, we were not ready to combat illness, to change it to wellness. Why are we not able to do that? Because somewhere in our design studios, this enhancement has not happened. And how would this enhancement happen? When we start looking at other parameters. So what are the other parameters? The first of them is called a transformation protocol. Why do I use the word protocol? Because we have to start addressing buildings with a certain norm. When we say a particular formula, that formula is sacrosanct for a variety of activities. The square on the hypotenuse. It's a age-old formula which is there. Exactly like that today, we have to establish protocols. The protocols must address the new things required in our design, in our education, simply because we are now faced with situations which were not anticipated, which did not happen in history. And even if they happened in history, I can't say pandemics didn't happen in history. Even if they happened in history, they were not documented like they have been documented today. Let's look at a very simple thing, the third item called social housing. What did we do, at least in the context of our country? We created something called housing boards. We created slum clearance boards. We created some Jawhar housing. And all we did everywhere was we started reducing the square footage to bring it within a certain budget. So today, how can you have a family of 5 living in 30 square meter and yet maintain all that you want them to do that? Unless we relook at our education to say, let's from the very beginning look at some things very seriously. So my first item is called transformation protocol, where I'm talking about protocol for living. Let's look at the new living. Let's not classify ourselves only on the basis of economy. Let us not classify ourselves on the basis of what a traditional English system left, blue collar, white collar, etc., etc. We don't have collars anymore. We all wear t-shirts. So let's look at unified way of bringing in education. From here, I am starting to go to the next level. I'm saying, let's look at future workspace. Are we teaching this in our schools now? Does our education encompass this? Are we saying that what you do must be easily be able to multiply itself without having to demolish? Can we look at plugins? Can our wonderful large stadiums, when no sports activity takes place and there is a need for urgent disaster management, where 1,000 people who have been displaced from their homes have to be put in the stadium, are the toilets sufficient? Is the lobby space sufficient? If not, I'm not saying we need to design larger toilets for lesser audience. What we can do, we can have systems where we can plug in ready-made cubicles and bring them and put them in place so that they'll start multifunctional activities. Let's look at this. And then what I do is I am now taking you all to a new aspect of education, which is now seriously lacking, whether in architecture, engineering, medicine, everywhere, that more and more disasters are occurring. Cyclones are occurring everywhere in the world. There is no such thing. At some point of time, unfortunately, people would say disasters like famine or floods or starvation would occur only in certain countries, not in the others. Today, cyclones have no mercy. Tsunamis have no maps and boundaries that they will attack. Are we prepared for this? Does our education teach us that we need to relook at our urban development? The disaster in Uttarakhand is the most classic example. Without criticism to very leading architects practicing in Lucknow, Delhi, and Dehradun, they all built beautiful resorts along this river bank. Not even once studying, I don't know. I mean, what I think is that they never studied what was 1 in 100-year floods or 1 in 50-year floods. And when the first major flood occurred, it just ate away into these buildings, devastated human life. Why do we not educate our youngsters, whether engineers or architects, that disasters will happen? And if you are able to take care of it, you have already achieved a major wellness objective, because our people are no more scared. People are ready to face nature. A few 100 years ago, when it rained, people ran and shut their windows and barricaded themselves. Today, we go out and sit in our balconies and enjoy the rain with a hot cup of tea. Can we do that? Can we look at the flooding of a river and say, thank you, Mother Earth, for giving us more water for the coming summer, instead of trying to run and protect ourselves? Only architects, engineers, management people can join hands, and this can only happen when it is inculcated into our education. And then we have to do some things now as a part of a new education. I'll quickly run through that. We have to rethink of sustainability, back to the basics. Let's understand how nature protected itself. How did it reproduce itself? How did forests happen? Significance of adaptive reuse, I explained. Conservation through tourism. Wellness tourism is the word. And how did this wellness come about? We, at one point of time, we didn't have resorts in jungles, but we did go to the forest to breathe fresh air and come back regenerate. That's what we need to do. And what do these demand? These demand creativity. These demand creative design. These demand design education. These demand the ability to learn problem solving with methods that may stimulate creativity. I'm going to quickly end with a couple of slides. Socrates beautifully said, I cannot teach anybody anything. I can only make them think. And that, to me, is the key word for our new architectural education for wellness, because we are all seeing it all around it. It's not a new subject. So my architectural education quickly, three things are important: the change in curriculum, adding to the syllabus, and renaming of institutions to think themselves about these. When I say institutions, I mean universities, colleges, whatever. Maybe they should call themselves institutions for wellness education. Is it time to revisit architectural teaching, education, and practice in India? Yes. Why? Because of wellness, because of students are at home, because of online classes, because they are at home, their mental well-being is suffering, especially in the architectural field, because we work with a great cohesive sense in our design studios. I completed my architecture 45 years ago. Even at that time, we had beautiful camaraderie in the studio. And we need a scholastic change for enhancement of our youth. And I call this a new mantra. My last slide. What is this new mantra? Let's rethink sustainability, because that is our key to wellness. Let us look at what is our end user commitment. What do end users need to be well and good? And can we, a lot of architects may shout at me and say, design as a product rather than process, so that refining becomes easy. Adding a new model every year becomes easy to our design. And a quick show of 3 or 4 buildings which I had done for wellness. And very recently, this house I designed for a client in somewhere in Mangalore sent me a lovely message last Sunday. He says their house is named Vanasri. He says, become a home for a large number of birds. A great peace of mind, thank you. I didn't do that. I only insisted on having verandas all around. And some of these, but everywhere I believe that nice open verandas attract birds and make you always feel good. And so I end with the famous Vedic quote: values in our education are guided by the ethics of our society, our living environment, and our wise but very unwise rulers today. Thank you all.
Oh, well, thank you, Professor Rao. You've given a new dimension, I must say. You know, think design global, think local. And I'm totally with you. We need to revolutionize our architectural education. That's the need of the hour. And I think it would happen with forces combining together. Thank you very much. It was a thought-provoking talk, no doubt. Thank you again. And our next speaker is renowned architect Nirmal Mangal.
Thank you, sir. Nirmal Mangal, he leads architectural practice-based building design sector and interior for M. Moser India. He brings more than 40 years of experience, and he is here to present on wellness as a design approach. To you, sir.
Thank you very much, Chinmay, for your kind introduction. Good evening. First of all, good evening to all participants. Without them, we wouldn't be having this session anyway. So, and my thanks to all fellow panelists, especially Professor Rao from GSS School of Architecture for Women, IGBC and Indian Institute of Architects, Mysore chapter, and others, my colleagues, my fellow architects who've joined on this session. You know, we are talking about wellness today. I mean, this topic couldn't be more relevant in today's timeline than any other time in at least recent memory as such. And one of the interesting thought that I had while we were discussing about this topic was that for generations, architects have been tasked with the responsibility of coming up with ways to solve, ways to address the social problems, the national disasters, to address the cultural problems as such. And every time that has happened, we've risen to that occasion. So now we find ourselves in the worst pandemic that most of us have faced in our lifetime. And we and the architects and the designers globally, they are looking at this pandemic in a very creative manner. One of the things that that I thought that as part of this discussion, I want to introduce some other thoughts as well. Let me go ahead and share a very brief presentation that I have put together. Okay, can you all see the presentation?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I do want to talk about that in the face of this pandemic, we have been discussing, we have been exploring the sustainable aspect of architecture. And to me, I don't want to lose the gains that we have made in the area of sustainability over the years as such. So for me, the order of the day is not just wellness, not just sustainability, but it truly is resilient architecture that in face of this pandemic, how our built environment can not only respond, but also to flourish as such. So when I look at that from that perspective, to me, resilient building design, is it a new wellness in design? Is it a new sustainability as such? And I shared this cartoon that was put together by a British architect who said that we designers, we architects, we are the agglomeration of thoughts and ideas. We take different aspects, bits and pieces from many different disciplines, and we combine it in our building, and we call that architecture. So while we are looking at resiliency, we need to be thinking about the wellness. We need to be thinking about sustainability, and those elements, I think they are not just for today. I hope that this is a paradigm shift in our thought process. I hope that our industry, our profession will take up this as a permanent change in our thought process, rather than something that we just do for now, and then when this pandemic passes over, we just simply forget about it. So as you know, one of the things I just wanted to share this with you, that I'm focusing just on the aspects what I from wellness concepts only that relate to architecture. My colleague, Dr. Christine Bruckner, she's an authority in the area of sustainability as well as wellness. She'll talk in detail about what wellness is all about. I just want to cherry pick and just talk about things that I want to borrow and add to our repertoire of design approach. So as many of you would know, that there are 7 concepts of wellness in design, both architecture and interiors. They are namely air, water, nourishment, light, fitness, comfort, and mind. So I'll take each one of those and I will put my own thought in each one of those and share this with you as to what we should be doing. So the first concept is air, and there are many many prerequisites and accommodations that is to be made in this concept as such, and I've highlighted the one that I want to cherry pick and talk about. That one is, the first one is natural ventilation. And many of the things, when we talk about wellness, some of the concern about wellness was that we live in air-conditioned building these days. We work in air-conditioned buildings, so that air is being circulated. So if there is any airborne illness, well, we are multiplying that. at the same point of time, many buildings in Indian context, they depend on natural ventilation. So one thing I want to talk about that as architects, as design professionals, when we are looking at the ventilation, we need to be thinking about natural ventilations for our projects which are non-air conditioned. We need to orient them in a way that would enhance the ventilation of the building. We need to understand what's a stack effect, what is the cross ventilation. We need to know the prevailing wind directions and all that kind of thing. The second thing that I want to talk about, which is rarely addressed in India, is construction pollution management. In most countries, they have what is called SWPP, which is stormwater pollution prevention plan that most construction projects should submit to the building authorities to get the sanction approval. We don't do that, but that has been a big cause of pollution, and pollution leads to many respiratory illness. And as you know, in Delhi, when the air quality was so poor, there was suspension of all construction activities. And it's not difficult to do, it's very doable. It is just that we need to be thinking about it. The third is that we think very little about the side drainage. For us, side drainage is an afterthought. And I'm talking about side drainage, not just for our site. Every site, when we develop a building, must be thinking about the regional drainage, how that site plugs into that. And there is a concept called sustainable drainage system, SUDS. And there are 4 concepts on that what is the water quantity that you are managing, what is the water quality that you would have, what are the amenities that you can create out of this water, and then what biodiversity can you create, should you create a water amenity on site. Then the next item is next concept is water. And with water, we really take it for granted. And as you know, many areas of the country has been suffering with severe water shortage. And India is a land of rivers. My God, how can we go through that? And this session is really not going to go in that direction. Why we have water shortage? I have very definite thoughts on that. And majority of them are man-made. We have severe runoff, and as Professor Rao talked about the disaster of Uttarakhand, I believe, those, if it was handled correctly, shouldn't have happened to begin with as such. So we need to be worried about the water quality, what we need to do. There needs to be ways to monitor the water quality on a side-by-side basis, and certainly how do we treat water, and especially if a site is in close proximity to waterways as such. The next concept and these are the concepts that we as architects, when we design building, must address, and that's what I'm cherry picking on. Many of us, we bring lunch from home when we go to work and all that, and most of us, you find that most offices are not really suited. They are not geared to provide some eating places as such, so people eat at their desk and all that. It takes very little to create places for people to have their lunches and all that kind of thing. It shouldn't be that they need to go to cafes and all that. So those providing right eating places that can function in all weather conditions, I think those are essential. It enhances the quality of life as such. The next concept is lights, and there are many aspects of it. And by the way, I've not listed all of them as such, but there are 3 which caught my attention. One is the circadian lighting. This is relatively new concept as such, not as old as I've been in profession, but relatively new. And what it does is that it mimics the intensity and color of light from morning till evening, so that our body responds to it in an appropriate manner as such. It enhances our immunity. It gives us better mood. There are many things it contributes in terms of lighting, what the lighting is supposed to be doing. for us and all of us, we know that it really doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that the daylight really is very, very essential for us. And I saw many years ago a picture in National Geographic in which the children of Siberia were being given UV lighting treatment because they do not get any natural light over there. So we need to do daylight modeling of every project just to know how we can maximize use of daylighting in a project. And that leads to how we can do maximize the daylight fenestration in our buildings as well. Cannot emphasize enough about that. The next one is, did I miss something? Okay. The next one is fitness. And, I'm so glad that we are looking at more and more about fitness as such. We need to promote the use of stair case design in our buildings as such, and combine ways to integrate stairs and ramps. And the image on upper right hand corner, this is a wonderful design in which the ramp is combined with staircases so that it makes any outdoor space very accessible to people. There needs to be exterior amenities to the extent possible, even in a small project which promotes connectivity. It gives people reasons to go out as such. I know I'm running kind of little bit over time, but let me just quickly mention this also. The next aspect is comfort. And there is a concept of universal design. And what universal design does is that it addresses the disability of all kind, from wheelchair to hearing disability to visually impaired to children to elderly. The design must address all of those kind of things. There needs to be also the noise abatement that needs to be part of our design. And one way natural means is to use landscape as noise abatement. And then as part of ergonomic, as Corbu thought about modularity, I think this is the history coming back that we need to be thinking from that direction as well. And then in terms of what do we do, how do we, create a stimulating environment for our mind. And the way we do that is, like, for example, that we have integrative design process. The image on the upper right-hand corner, this is, by the way, this is a process that we at Mosher use, that in which we want to integrate all design professional along with the client to create something that really addresses their needs as such. We need to be looking at biophilia to stimulate our mind. We need to have adaptable spaces so that spaces can function in more than one way as such. So with that, I just want to quickly show a few projects as such. One of the things that we also as a thought process is to really use roof as a meaningful places of respite. Means when in urban environment where open spaces are in there aren't very many, we need to look at how we can utilize roof spaces as usable spaces as such. These are some of the projects which have been certified as well project. And I thought I want to show you that after going through this routine, is it possible to create the wonderful architecture? And it picked out about 3-4 projects. This is an office building. This is called Rio 55 Sur in Spain. This is CSEP Gigi. This is in Hangzhou City, China. And I like them very much because they really are very stimulating. This is Epic. This is by a wonderful construction firm from Sweden. And this was an abandoned place on the waterfront, and they've really revitalized this space as such. And this is an employee center. This is for employee recreation, actually, in San Francisco for a company called Genentech. With that, I thought I'll pass it back to Chinmay. I may have taken a couple of minutes extra, so I hope that's quite all right. Thank you, Chinmay.
Yeah. Thank you, Nirmal. It was invigorating to understand Yes, the order of the day, as you say, is resilient architecture, not only to respond, but also to take it forward meaningfully, and a very good, very good insight, I must say, to the 7 concepts of wellness that you explained. Time being what it is, I guess we would go to our next esteemed speaker, Manav Gupta.
Mr. Manav Gupta, who is one of the eminent contemporary artists of the country, who has created some of the most iconic public art projects in India, as a pioneer and a thought leader in the field. Mr. Manav Gupta is here to share his views on artist perspective. Over to you, sir.
Very good evening to everyone, and thank you so much, Dr. Rao and Sumit and everyone to have organized this and invited me. And it's indeed a great pleasure to have such distinguished architects and panelists and the audience, along with students, to be exchanging thoughts as an artist. Because as an artist, what's important is that what are you doing beyond art? And for me, that was a very relevant and pertinent question, because I have always tried to embrace architecture and nature. Nature has been my source of inspiration. It's been my journey of art all through. It's given me everything that I am. And therefore, the 5 elements and how I can bring that and share my art and my process with architecture, with spaces, and on an evolving timeline across 25 years of art practice since my first solo, into public domain, where art and design and architecture all become very interspersed, interlinked. And especially in these times when we are looking for new solutions, I think this is a very avant-garde and brilliant thought to have this discussion, because it's so relevant in terms of especially the healing quality of art, the healing quality of design and nature and architecture that can be now used and can be serviced for mankind across boundaries. Dr. Rao mentioned local to global, and that's what I've been trying to do with my practice. So I'd like to share the journey to some extent. So let me first just share not the latest projects, which is a lot to do with architecture, which is not officially launched, so I'm not sharing that. But this is 27 acres of IGNCA in Delhi, space which had such a huge Sylvan and architectural space. And that space was hosted by Ministry of Culture for my installations. And this is where the use of the transformation of pottery that I've been doing for the last decade and more, using the 3 units of pottery, which is very local, the quintessentially prosaic, earthen lamps and chillums and coolers, the earthen cups, to transform that into large-scale installations. I'll just give you a glimpse of these episodes of and chapters and these projects that I've been doing, which embrace architecture and nature. So here, this is rain. My endeavor is how I can take my art outside the domain of just my own creation into a public space which has a dialogue vis-a-vis art and nature, art and embracing architecture, as well as with people. So here I embrace trees, because in Delhi the pollution was so high that as an artist, what can I do to embrace trees? And I decided to turn chillums into rain, which I had been working for a long time. And I hung this rain across trees as a way of and inspiration from the Chipko movement. So you embrace trees and you embrace the water element through clay. So I used one element, which is clay, which is very earth, to transform it into water. So here there was this juxtaposition of not just water falling on the trees, which nurtures the trees as a symbolism that I wanted to convey amongst people, but also to embrace trees, that in Delhi, the pollution that we have, if we can save our trees, if we can hug them with what we do, I, as an artist, I create. So how can I embrace the trees, through my creation, is how I created this rain. And this was an entire rainforest model, and with the beehives along with it. So this, we'll come back to this. Here is another example where I embraced architecture. Now, this is again another completely central space in the heart of the city of Delhi, at the India Habitat Center. So the IHC is a very, very core cultural hub and a very happening center in the city. Now, to bring a river within the city was something that I was very, very excited about. Now, to create a river, is one thing, but to embrace architecture without really encroaching on it is another thing. So I found this space, and you would notice that these I served as, I used as mountains. So the fall of the river, or the waterfall, or the waterfront that I created ran across the steps. And I got this lovely place called the Plaza Steps at Habitat Center. And I embraced that space with the river. So here, what did I do? I took the earthen lamp and I did a dishon on it. I inverted the earthen lamp into a droplet of water. And I created several lakhs and lakhs of these earthen lamps into a river. So this river was not just quiet. It was a river where there were a lot of stories to happen. There was a lot of engagement to happen, because how would one communicate besides art, a step beyond? So this is another space, another architectural piece called the Mati Ghar at the IGNCA, which a lot of people would know, all of you would know. Mati Ghar has been there for many, many years at IGNCA in Delhi, which was made of clay and which was meant to be demolished for several years, but it was kept somehow. Now, I wanted to embrace that Mati Ghar with clay as a waterfall, and I created the waterfall on Mati Ghar as again, activism does not need to be loud and aggressive and violent, or just negative. It can also be positive. Through art, what can one communicate? What can one say? That the future of architecture could be these kind of spaces where we have clay, we have material which are eco-friendly, and therefore I embraced the Mati Ghar with my river, with the earthen lamps. And here, these 27 acres were sprawling with Sylvan surroundings. So I decided to create the beehives, which I've been working on for several years, with the trees. And I embraced the trees again, besides rain, with the beehives. And these are made with chillums. So one is a micro design element, which is converting the beehives, converting the chillums into beehives, and the earthen cups, which are used for drinking water, which is very prosaic, into beehives. And there are so many possibilities with such iterations of beehives, and there is such a strong message in terms of how the bees are turning extinct and how they're useful. So this has been a journey of more than 2 decades, and I wanted to. This is installed at the most premium mall in Delhi, at the Mall of India, where it was a kind of disruptive engagement where suddenly amidst spaces which are very, very, with premier brands, etc., you have something so earthen, something so prosaic, and yet it is a collector's item. It serves several purposes, and it conveys the message of sustainability, of environment. Now, with all these, how do you take the art as an artist into innovation, into invention? So besides the invention of transforming pottery into a global language, from the local to the global, what was important to me was how can I create outreach? How can I create public engagement? So I had several students, and we had fantastic sessions at each of these projects where they were embracing rain. They were engulfed in rain, and it was an overwhelming experience. I mean, I had goosebumps when they used to come and talk to me about how it touched their lives. And these children are our future. So for me, it was very vital. Despite not having the right resources, despite not having the right funding, abroad there is a lot of public art, and there is very established public art funding available. Here, there was none, and it was a huge challenge to create this out of no funding and minimum funding or very negligible funding. So to create this and then invite the children was a passion that I've been carrying for several years. Now here, I did another symbolism in terms of how could I translate the message of river in the city. So I invited everybody to come and light lamps at the river. So this is not religious, and it could have turned into something else. But the fact that it had the aura of a spiritual engagement and the aura of sustainable engagement was something very satisfying for me, because people came and lit lamps with that kind of respect for the river. And I had people coming and sitting beside it, sitting at the riverside within the city. And this embracing of architecture, this mingling of art and architecture and people, this entire juxtaposition of all these elements was something which was very, very heartening. I had another project where I created a prototype museum where I invited people to embrace rain, to dance in rain. So chillums, as you know, are conduit of intoxication. And I said, don't do drugs, let's get drenched in rain. So I was converting and bringing about social change through art. Now, this, I feel, is a wellness practice, which is beyond just the comfort of my studio. Then I had these choreographic directions that I initiated, where I requested fellow artists, and we had wonderful senior most artists like Uma Sharma ji, Shobna, and so many others, coming and participating and actually performing to my poetry, and getting involved in the process. And I had these panel discussions all as dialogues at the waterfront. So these are all 10 to 15 year more than decade old public art practices that I thought would take wellness, would take healing of art into public domain, into public spaces. Now, wellness, when we talk of, is a very, art in itself is a very meditative process. So, one can create paintings, and one used to do that. This was auctioned at Christie's. This has been auctioned at Christie's, and I was blessed. This is my Rainforest series, and these works are works that I create as paintings, which are sold. This was auctioned in Ponderings. But beyond this, beyond these sculptures and paintings, when one is creating, one is in a meditative practice. So if not just as an artist, as anybody, as people, whoever engage in any creative practice or in any practice whatsoever, even in sports. I mean, it has a very highly meditative quality, which is a wellness within. So first is it's about wellness within. Now, when I was creating Rain, it was very interesting, that the first episodes of Rain, when I was working with Chilam in my studio, it started raining, and it was such a matter of joy. It was so such great synchronicity that I was absolutely stumped. So that gives wellness, and that brings forth wellness. Now, as an artist, these are large murals, large canvases, 20 feet canvases that one creates in spaces, and that has the aesthetic wellness. So in architectural spaces, I mean, architects could use these. These are in Aerocity, 20 feet high canvases, and architecture can utilize art in terms of the aesthetic appeal, in terms of the wellness quality of it. But I went, and I mean, the glimpse that I gave you was what beyond the aesthetics can one do in terms of activating a movement, activating a thought process amongst people. So this, I would like to share about 10 years back, this project, which was, this is a world record public mural. It's at the Airtel campus. It's the tallest indoor mural in the world. It's a 5-floor mural at the Airtel campus, which is their headquarters. Now, this is another example of wellness and healing, and how one can take art beyond just the act of painting. So I was selected, and commissioned when there was this huge space of 5 floors against the glass, behind the glass facade, which was a big eyesore, and it was to be turned as beautiful as Mysore in what they wanted. So they wanted to create something very beautiful here. Now, this was what it was, and this is what it is now. Now, this is not on glass. This is on the staircase. So on the front and back staircase, I mingled the juxtaposition. This was how it was before, and this is what is after. And then, it was a huge project, and it was 5 floors high, and I was creating. But what did I do? I said that I am going to be watched by all of these people, 4,000 strong employees, who are going to see me paint. So I wanted to infuse that wellness amongst them in that entire campus. And therefore, I invited everyone to come and join me. And it was one of the most exhilarating experiences, because people went berserk. We had streams and streams of employees coming in groups, and I was doing employee management, team building. I was doing so many things at the same time, and they were so excited. They were so rejuvenated, and for me, it was such a rejuvenating experience that I was exchanging. I was allowing them to use my canvas, and I was allowing them to paint, and they could go berserk. And there was all kinds of things. They were doodling, love messages to their girlfriends, etc. And then finally, after everything was done, at night, I used to come to the other side, because it was a huge space, and watch and conceptualize on the go. I did not have blueprints. I don't work with blueprints. I work straight on the large spaces. So I used to come to the other side at night, and in the quiet of the night, I used to conceptualize on the go. And as it shaped up, the tree of life finally emerged as this shape. So after the 4,000 employees, it was a sense of belonging, sense of wellness, sense of healing, sense of rejuvenation, where they could come, paint, and then again go back. This was the final product, where I created the tree of life across 5 floors, and and all these shutters went up, and they could see the entire tree of life and experience it, and also feel a part of it. So this led to these large spaces that I started exploring with pottery, and transforming pottery into a global vocabulary. And I did several thought experiments where the river was flowing across a dry potted plant. And there was design at the micro level where I was inverting, as I said, the earthen lamp into douche, doing a douche on it. And I was embracing spaces, and then the effect of water with glass. This was at the DLF Mall, where again, inviting people to come and be a part of it by lighting of lamps, and then getting them to be a part of the creative process in terms of the beehives, and then to experience rain and the rainforests. And this was several schools coming in, and experience that cannot be put in words. And it was something that I very, very deeply cherish. So wellness and architecture, art and design are all very, very, potent possibilities for creating awareness on sustainable practices for our future generations. And these artists can play a huge role. So I tried to take art beyond art, and that's what I've been practicing as an artist. That how can I, bring about wellness by changing a space, bringing in the prosaic pottery into Amrita Shergill Marg as a prototype museum, or into Aerocity as the time machine, and the sound of Om as the time machine. So these are earthen cups, and we are all cups of clay. And this was juxtaposed against brands at the Mall of India. So these are different episodes and different experiences. And the thought experiments where I let the river flow as if water was flowing. And this was another magical moment where after a few months of the project being there, we had the plant blossom on its own. I placed a dry twig because obviously gardeners could not come in water. And lo and behold, this was a transformation. So the thought experiment, the power of thought is very powerful. If you feel that you can bring in the city, bring in river inside the city, bring in rain and let people experience it, then you can create magic. And that's the homage that one can pay to nature. And within the city, one can bring about change through that. So these are experiments that I've done. And I would like to share a small clipping of 1 minute glimpse of how I got performances at the waterfront.
Sacred if you believe, I lie wrapped in a heap of nothingness. Sacred if you believe, I lie wrapped in a heap of nothingness, unsung, unlit, unheard, till the end of time. At an altar sometimes, flames peep out of my earthen palms. An iridescent torch woven by moonbeams, and your soul sings your desires. Because life, after all, may be the soul's celebration. Remember Troy and Achilles. They said the gods, they are jealous of us because we are humans, because the river flows as love, as the world rejoices and lights glow. Harsh outside, the leaves that appear shelter the story of river and stone, and the flame glows. Sacred, oh sacred if you believe, let the light descend, let the light glow. Let there be flames in my parched hands, Let there be water as the river flows.
So
That's
I
it.
think I would end this with this performance that I shared. And this is a 360-degree perspective that I thought I could share with the distinguished audience of the panelists here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madhav. Wonderful, absolutely. How you interlock art, architecture, and design, and the fantastic talk of how the entire process of healing can well be accomplished through art. And of course, fantastic installations. Thank you so much once again. Yeah, I think shall we once again continue with our next speaker? I'm afraid we are going to be short of time, but Architect Christine, renowned sustainable expert, could I request you for your views on this on the subject?
Hello, everybody. That was fantastic. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. I'm going to share a few slides in a bit of a Pechakucha style so that we can understand a little bit about wellness architecture. And I think some amazing concepts have been shared already. So thank you to all of our fellow panelists. I'll just give you a little bit of an introduction. I'm an architect, have been practicing for many, many years, looking at how we can integrate sustainability and wellness into every space that we create for people. And many of the ideas of actually engaging and working with others, working with users, working with the public, mentoring, sharing, this is definitely something that is very important to me. And I wish we could all be together personally in India at your school. And I look forward to opportunities to work together with the students and to really engage and go into these in more depth. We are honored to have, I work with M. Moser Associates as a director, and Moira Moser, the whole company, is a woman-owned company. And there's a lot of elements. I know you are a women-focused architectural school, and there is something called WLSA. WSLA is the Women's Sustainable Leadership, and it's a way of bringing people together who are looking to help find ways to make a more sustainable future. And we have mentorship programs, and we do a lot of that internally as well. Here are many of our own people. We're over 1,100 strong. We're in many countries around the world, but very strong in India. And we look to work together as a community. And these are our people. It's really important bringing it back to people. At the end of the day, we design spaces for people, with people. It's all about creating community. And these are some of the ways that our community gives back and looks to share. We've done many talks around the country, around the globe, to continue to learn from one another and to share what we've learned. So if I take a step back, for me, architecture is truly the design of places within which people and organizations can reach and exceed their highest potential. And this is a definition that I learned at a young age with my father as an architect and my mother as an urban designer, that we need to understand buildings on how they support people and human needs, and really looking at how we design for physical and mental health and well-being of not only individuals, but of entire communities. So how do we do this? One of our key motivators is working with nature. And we're going to go through a few very clear details, but taking these images, taking this concept, and working with everything that comes through our site to magnify it, embrace it, and bring it into our designs. And it is very exciting in this time to see that many of the designs which are focused on sustainability and wellness are also being recognized by our profession. And this is one of our offices, actually in Hong Kong. And these are many of the ways that we create wellness architecture. We can start in the beginning, working with people, understanding their thinking, taking it through the entire design process, through the entire construction process, and then post-move-in, understanding how it can be used and embraced and continuously repurposed and multiply used. We understand, of course, that sustainability is paramount. This is something that has been at the foundation of our work, having a light touch on our shared planet. And wellness architecture is also very critical, and it's beginning to get more and more awareness. And it's something I've devoted extensive amount of research and time to see how can we as architects build wellness architecture. What does that mean? And you can see some comments and some images along the side here, but it's understanding that when we sit for too long, we can start to lose our creativity, and physically things can happen to our health. If a space doesn't have the right acoustics, it can jar our thoughts and we can lose our whole train of creativity. And yet in a certain environment, buzz will encourage us to sing and to get excited. Our thermal comfort goes far beyond. And working again with nature, with biophilia, the love of nature, and understanding it's not only a great feeling and experience, but there are scientifically proven impacts of the natural world on our bodies, on our brains, and on the way that we can think and create and feel. So it's really important to understand that and to integrate it into our designs. We are looking for all of the best practices that exist. We are looking at all of them. We're implementing them all. Many times they overlap. We're looking to curate what are the best metrics that we can use to push that bar higher in every project that we do. And I think here we can just step back for a minute and think, well, what is health? What are we talking about? What is wellness? Going to the World Health Organization's definition, it's not just the absence of disease, it's complete physical, mental, and social well-being. That's what wellness is, and wellness architecture needs to embrace that. So what does it mean to be healthy? And you can see in this diagram, it's not just our genetics, that's a small part. It's not just our medical care and how we've taken care of ourselves in terms of our workouts. Our physical, social environment, that is the spaces that we design, that we inhabit, they have the biggest impact on on ourselves and on our health. So that gives us as architects an incredible opportunity and responsibility to develop healthy spaces for people. So what does well mean to you? It impacts more than your body. It impacts your mind. And it impacts the way that you experience every part of your life. So we've dedicated a great deal of time to this bespoke mind and design research, which is something that M. Moser has been working on for years now. And I'd pose to you the question, many of you are students and professors, how do we design architecture to empower, inspire, and heal? And I use the word heal very purposefully because the healing process is ongoing. Preventative medicine, the designs and the spaces that we're in can make all the difference. And we can create that at every scale. So let's start at the biggest scale, the scale of a city, the scale of a city-scaled campus. And this is a project we've just finished building in Shanghai. The entire space embodies wellness. The center is a courtyard open to the community, visible from every space, with natural environments, daylighting, movement, lighting, and it just finds ways to bring people together. So how do we bring that into the entire city? And you can see here, the entire space is about an oasis, always going back to nature, seeing it from inside and outside, being very sustainable. But as we design these spaces for people within, people can as easily select to work outside. And even sometimes there's no glass at all, and they can be in both spaces at once. These environments are uplifting, lots of natural ventilation, lots of choice. People are empowered with choice. And creating an entire workplace of the future means incorporating technology, incorporating all of the things that we're really learning how to understand, but
I assume that we've lost connection
I'm
with
so
Christine.
sorry. I'm not sure what happened just there,
Yeah,
but
we
it
lost
seems
you
that we
immediately.
were,
Yeah.
yeah, that's very unusual. I have excellent internet, but something happened. Let's try one more time. Can you see again the screen?
We can see a blank screen.
Are you seeing the screen with me?
The screen is
A
blank.
blank screen? Well, that's unfortunate. Oh, my dear. Let me just see for a moment here. I'm going to stop sharing that blank screen and I will continue to share this PowerPoint. It seems to be that there's some challenges here. So I'm going to select this one. Let me know if you can see it again. I'd really love to share a few more images with you. So give me a heads up. We tend to work
Yes.
with,
You're back.
yes?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can see you now.
Okay. So again, bringing wellness architecture. One. So apologies. So wellness architecture is about supporting collaboration. Again, bringing people together. Sit-stand desks, areas to collaborate beyond our desks. And we've worked with this client as well. That was Cook Medical in India. This is their project. We're doing a whole campus in Shanghai. You can see the skylights at the top, green walls going through, staircases and movement, creating a very healthy space with rooftop gardens and understanding simultaneously how much daylighting is coming in, having very smart elevations and facades, working on the same ideas in their Hong Kong offices. And I just wanted to share with you one of the images of the people in that space, because after we designed and brought the spaces to WELL certification and changed some of the mentality and understanding of the space, the users couldn't even recognize the way that they were participating, and the community grew intensively with zero attrition. And this is what we're looking for, people who are engaged and excited by the design of the spaces that we create and that we're in. How do we enhance performance at every scale? This is a building with an interior garden space that everybody can share. And this is actually the back of house of a large campus we designed. Even the back of house, it's for people. It's daylight, it's greenery, it's natural materials, it's activity. So quickly, I'd like to just share some foundational elements. So you've seen some of the beautiful ways that architecture looks when you create wellness architecture. And the next step is, well, how does one really create that? Well, first step is you've got to have great air and great water, because we are really required to have that to breathe, to live. We breathe 15,000 liters of air per day, so this is very important and provides peace of mind, particularly now with an airborne transmittable disease, that we can know what the quality of our air is. And we can monitor that 24/7, and we do that as many projects as possible, and we want everybody in the space to know the quality. We use all kinds of measurements to make the invisible visible. And you can see, when you're worried about air, how does that affect architecture? Well, for example, in this old building, an industrial building, we simply created a special vestibule, a vestibule that filters the air, that gives you a presence of belonging and brings you right into the space. Again, another way that's critical to all of us is, what do we specify? The materials, everything you're looking at, the table, the chairs, the walls, the paint. We vet every single one, and we know if they're good or not because we're measuring the air. And we know before you move in that the air is going to be excellent. And in fact, we actually monitor the air during construction to prove that it's always good, straight through. That gives you incredible peace of mind, and peace of mind is critical. Hydration, clear water, of course, very important. I would say that versatility and movement are two of the most important elements of wellness. And here you can see rooms that can move. This on the left, you can see a whole room that can be inside or outside. Everything on wheels. And I have a video on this I'll share with you later if we have time. But even our green walls, our buildings, everything can move, and people can change it and are empowered to create the spaces they need at that time, which changes throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the years. We are social beings, and we create places. This is a staircase between floors, but it's also become a great place for people to collaborate, to have show and tells, to bring people together, and it's right next to a garden. This is actually one of our offices again, which we treat as living labs. So every one of our offices, we're testing them out, understanding what works so that we can deliver it for clients, for schools, for beyond. Again, energizing through movement. And here's a little detail. It's about guidance, gentle guidance. We look at these curves, getting away from some of those harsh angles. It's very gentle to have details, whether they're in the ceilings, whether they're around you. This is our office in Shenzhen. They can be at different levels, but guiding air, guiding movement. This, you can see how the wood is curving, it's gently lit. Everything about it gives you peace. And within that peace, you're ready to do whatever you need to do and be your very best. Again, more details of this. And you need to have places to really move and play, of course. Here you can see this is Yale University in Beijing. That curving is happening in translucency and the natural materials of the floors. And this brings us to daylighting. Daylighting is maximized, and as we've talked about before, we do model that daylighting to maximize it for everybody. And as was mentioned earlier, circadian rhythms are critical. Every single cell in our body takes in light and relates to light, and is important that we maximize at least 4 hours of really good light per day. And many of us don't get quite enough of that, and it affects every part of our bodies. And designing for that to prevent glare and yet to allow for clarity is critical. And I'll just share this one, literally less than 1 minute, and see if we can hear it. Here are those 7 concepts. And it's time to take a breath. A very short glimpse into the experience of a peaceful space. And that restorative environment doesn't have to be in a meditation space. It can be in your office, in your home, in your school, in your hospital. And it's not just the materials and the movement, it's the lighting, it's the acoustics. So very important to work with acoustics. This room here can work at an NC30. That means lots of things are soaking in the acoustics, and they're allowing you to de-stress. And we really do study the brain and how we can be at our best. It's very much about de-stressing so that we can focus, get into the zone. And the last element to really talk about when we do that is the love of nature, biophilia. This is also a working environment, but it could be a park. And this is one of our offices. This is New York. And this is very exciting because you can literally change it. Every time I come, we move the walls, we change things around. We use it for
just about creating a workplace, but a platform for real people to solve the world's most difficult.
We do have some pets that are allowed. We have a lot of fun. It's very open.
Creating physical environments that support creativity and productive working relationships.
Everything's on wheels.
That intuitively connect people and ideas into communities, and a cultural environment that enables authenticity, supported by tools and methods to promote high performance. We see the highest performing organizations as those that align the physical, digital, and cultural environments.
So you can see in that one that we have a lot of fun, and you really do need to be able to move things around to be present. And the last thing is not only to have it in your environment, but to get people out into nature. So these are some of our staff. We work together, growing things, even in the most dense cities. Of course, in some areas you can have whole gardens. Here, we just created some urban gardens with organics, with farmers coming in, sharing their methodologies, and people being able to bring that home, cook together. We do that for schools. I'd love to share some more on the design of these schools, but we're running out of time. Also with hospitals. Where is it more important to have wellness architecture? So important. People heal so much faster. And between skyscrapers, the spaces in between, they shouldn't be left to happenstance. We've created spaces which are entire livable environments in the interstice. Every space is for people. So we need to do it together, and we need to do it now. Really, people are the most important part of this. And let's work together towards a sustainable future to steward our planet and our future generations. And I look forward to speaking with you all more soon. My email's there if you want to chat. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Christine. I feel half healed, and mentally and physically, actually. It was so just soothing, Thank you so much for that. And it is so important to be conscious in design that ultimately it is for the community, by the community, and for it, and to empower, inspire, and heal. You brought it out so beautifully. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker now, maybe we can shift, is architect Ramalakshmi from Bengaluru.
So, yeah, architect R. Ramalakshmi is a co-founder of Bangalore-based architectural practice Samyukt Design Studio. The studio pursues design, research, and teaching concurrently. The works explore architectural tectonics in diverse contexts, climates, and scales with a search for critical, sensitive, and contemporary interpretation of architecture. Architect Ramalakshmi will be presenting now on the Indian perspective.
Good evening. I'll be discussing architecture for well-being in two parts in the context of India and through our projects. One could argue that the fundamentals of well-being in the Indian context is grounded in an idea of a haptic or an experiential architecture rather than a picturesque or image-centric architecture. This is pursued broadly through 4 strategies, which I'll illustrate with examples. Firstly, the idea of well-being operates within a large conceptual framework rather than a list of rules rigidly set in stone. Take, for instance, the planning principles in India. What we see on screen is the satellite image of the 600-year-old city of Ahmedabad established in 1411. To plain sight, this might seem like a maze of winding roads and streets, alleys, squares of different profiles, even chaotic. However, a deeper examination by Professor Chhaya reveals that this non-Cartesian geometry or lack of right angles in the city planning is just so to adjust to existing slopes and topography for water drainage. This explains why the old city of Ahmedabad seldom gets flooded during monsoon, keeping the city dry and free of waterborne diseases. The larger lesson here is to design using first principles, that is to respect an implicit underlying order rather than an explicit imposed visual order. The second is context appropriateness, so widely discussed by the architectural fraternity. Here we see two very widely different house forms, but both are trying to address earthquake or seismic response. The first is the Kachchi Bunga, operating in the hot and dry climate of Gujarat. So the cylindrical house forms protect from lateral forces of earthquake. However, the thick mud walls and smaller apertures are to counter hot and dry climate, where verandas and courtyards are counterproductive. Next, we see the house forms in Himalayan cities as pointed out by Pratyush Shankar. Here, alternating courses of stone and wood resist horizontal thrust of earthquake. However, the house form is linear and multi-story to increase solar exposure in the cold region. What we see here is the universal aspiration for well-being comfort, and shelter, but operating with local intelligence or context sensitivity. Coming to our third strategy, it's the poetics of tectonics. Here we are not referring to romanticizing a certain material like stone or wood or surface articulation like carving. However, it's much in the same vein like Khan asks, ask a brick what it wants to be. This is a 17th century structure from Bishnupur in West Bengal. Use of bricks is justified by availability of good clay in the delta plains, but lack of stone for construction. And it's no secret that the brick operates best in compression. Hence, we see a variety of arcuate systems across West Bengal. This idea of employing and expressing an inherent structural and material attribute of building materials resonates even today, as seen in the Sharda Library project by Sameep Padora. We see the use of flat brick in the Catalan wall technique, taking the form of the lines of forces, lending the roof profile, which can be inhabited below and above. This poetry of tectonics is basically the coming together of a material, its structural attribute, giving rise to the architectural expression. This also brings us to the fourth quality, which is the theoretical indivisibility of conceptualizing architecture with first principles, with context sensitivity, and an expressive tectonic coming together to create a haptic architecture. This is best demonstrated by stepwells. Stepwells are subterranean structures often lacking in elevation. Here we see the stepwell of Ahmedabad in Adalaj. Merely two columns, very unsuspecting. You take a right and you're sucked into the cool, dark interiors from the scorching heat of Ahmedabad. As explained by Professor Jain, these internal galleries or pavilions perform dual role, primarily as a structural system of shoring and strutting, preventing the earthen sides from collapsing inwards. Secondly, as a resting pavilion, much needed respite in this hot and dry climate. This is an exemplary public infrastructure which demonstrates architecture for social, physical, and ecological well-being, pursued through a harmonized coming together of designing with first principles, context sensitivity, and an extremely poetic tectonics. This is what we try to emulate in our own small way through our projects as well. I'll quickly take you through a few of them. This is a farmhouse located in the hot and dry climate in Satnavri in Maharashtra. We were not looking at a farmhouse as a romanticized postcard imagery of sloping roof, clay tiles, and mud walls. Rather, a performative tool consistent with building in a remote location with very low skilled labor, 25 lakh budget, and scorching heat of 48 degrees in Satnavri. Hence, we had to explore techniques to minimize heat gain, siting of the building under roof canopy with thermocol filler slab roof, lime plaster to reduce heat gain from vertical surfaces, using salvage wooden louvered windows without glass to prevent greenhouse effect. All this creating an ambient temperature in summer from 48 degrees to 40 degrees because of employment of these strategies, and lending outdoor living room, which is a courtyard, for varying activities in different seasons. In the same way, we were looking at a housing for a cricket academy, looking at mutual shading, study models, partially sunk structures, thick walls for thermal mass, so on and so forth. Apart from looking at a context response in terms of climate, we're also looking at how to express material attributes. This is a bamboo pavilion located on the second floor of a load-bearing house. So we had to create an extremely lightweight structure. We used the properties of a locally available bamboo as the principal generator of design. The local variety tapers beyond 10 feet, hence the entire proportioning system derived from it to create a wind modulating pavilion. Another exploration of material and structure is this school that is coming up in Bangalore, where we use the RCC columns as C-shaped gutters as we see over here, and this facade gets activated in monsoon. The columns become rainwater gutter with cascading water, and water is harvested below, or these brick fins which are oriented for glare-free ventilation. We'd like to conclude by saying that while we are constantly trying to achieve this harmony between designing with first principles or exploring context sensitivity and tectonic exploration, um, the principal search is for creating an architecture which is haptic or experiential rather than picturesque or image centric. We leave you with this reservoir of inspiration, the Kailasha temple, 7th century Ellora. When you see from outside, it's not an elevation screaming for attention. Rather, the rocky outcrop blends with its context, in fact, hinting at a rather radical tectonic for its time, the architecture of subtraction or scooping out. You experience the spaces in piecemeal and episodic manner. I'm deliberately showing images as experienced and not through a wide angle lens. You experience compression, release, architecture of scooped out caves and carved out temples. This truly is the architecture of well being, architecture from and of the context, an architecture epitomizing conceptual thinking, an architecture of a highly poetic tectonic order. Like all great architecture, cannot be only visually consumed and has to be experienced. Thank you.
Thank you so much, architect Ramalakshmi. It was indeed very articulately brought forward, how traditionally well-being in design, in urban planning, and in architecture was always taken care of so meticulously. And also, it's an insight, I would say, how young practices also are responding, imbibing elements of sustainability in contemporary living. Thank you so much for that insight.
Saying about your school, we really are interested in knowing under the school, how it has come up. All of us want to know.
No, essentially, I wouldn't really want to get into details of it, but it is to unlock the potential of women, by empowering them, by creating awareness about our specialized field, our built environment. And we have had our years ago when Srimati Rukmini Bai, the makings of the school is like this, that many years ago, who was the mother of, this is just one instance where the late mother of Professor B.S. Pandit thought educating a girl child was a valid cause for which she dedicated her entire life. And then, they brought out the engineering technological institution, and to promote affordable education under technology as GSSS IETW. And later on today, GSSS has carved a niche for itself in the field of education in Karnataka with more than 4,000 students. And, they function out of 3 campuses with about 350 employees. But, well, it is an honor to be part of this venture while we have commenced the first of its kind School of Architecture for girls alone. And that too, we braved it during the pandemic times. Commenced in 2020. I must say thanks to Professor Ramakrishna Rao, who is also the mentor and the advisor for the school, and the architect Sunit Paul, who's been here, is a part of our governing council member, and Nirmal Mangal sir is also on the board of governors. And we have the administrative, band of people with R.K. Bharat, who is our CEO, and Professor Pandit's daughter, who is our administrative officer, Anupama ma'am, and we have the principal and Pratap Kumar, who is the joint secretary. But even now, as an inspirational force, we have, Professor, Srimati Vanaja Pandit, who is Mrs. Late B.S. Pandit, who takes care of every small thing in the school and trying to help us through the baby steps that we have with entire support. And to be able to think about, we haven't stopped at anything at these earlier stages. We have been trying to stimulate the sensitivity of creative and creative capabilities of students, and to help develop proficiency in our field, which is very, very important. We would like to make them thinkers. See, there are four segments of learning which we are looking at. One is the core concept, the architectural design. And the second is the creativity, where we bring in the art component of architecture. And the third is the study component, inclusive of humanities and science, etc. And finally, the skill component, which involves a lot of hands-on model making, feeling the material, etc. kind of studies. And our girls, who are only about 14 students now, are absolutely privileged, I must say, because they almost have 1:1 ratio of faculty here. And here we're trying to look at work through all the constraints, limitations, and the forward-looking thinking of our mentors and everybody. The thing is that we have come up with. I mean, they said that we have a uniform code to follow in the institution, and the first picture on the screen shows that we have all the students who have designed their own uniforms. This was the first exercise as they walked into the school. Day one, they designed this, and we made it for them, and they wore it. And everything has been experiential, and they're looking at things. They have traveled around. They've gone to Srirangapatna. All this has happened during the slight opening of the lockdowns and all that. And they have come up with excellent models even during the times now. And so we are hoping to find solutions, but and not to find solutions, but to make it happen is what we're looking at. And I really hope today's presentations by all the eminent scholars here must have inspired our girls who are also part of this entire program. And in shaping this school as a responsibility, it is to inspire, to communicate, and sustain quality growth, and under the guidance of everyone, all the inspirers. Anyways, I would like to really welcome this wellness mantra that we are looking at. We still have, the concepts of how we look at the environment. We are also venturing now into the construction of the new building, which is going to be designed under the leadership of Professor Ramakrishna Rao, and all of us will be involved. In fact, all of us will be involved in making of the school, and I really hope it will be one of its kind. And I really hope to see everybody's interaction again once we are, probably the next session, when we are able to showcase many more works. I'm actually cutting short my presentation completely because it's a little not poised for the end, but we've really absolutely enjoyed all the presentations today, right from beginning to end of the whole session. I must say the neo kind of education that architecture, which Rao sir was talking about, or Sunil Paul's inspirational talk, and everybody's contribution to this, making a wellness school of architecture. Maybe we can think of that as a way forward from here. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sudhindra, for this.
Thank you, madam. It's my pleasure. Sorry for the technical. I don't know what your end.
I don't know what happened.
We missed your presentation at the start.
No, I'm in-house, so we can always do that. So
glad to know about it. Know about your school. We want to know more about it in the coming days. Thank you.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely.
Yeah, Chinmay. Chinmay, unmute yourself.
Sorry, yeah. So we are almost in the end of the session. So now will be, so architect Sunil Paul sir will take over the stage, and we'll have a panel discussion.
In fact, as I said in the beginning, during the panel discussion, we are all going to be moderating each other. So why don't I take this opportunity to hand over the mic to Professor Rao, who can take over the proceeding for the discussion. Although I believe if it's 8 o'clock, we have very little time. We are already at 8. But just to add a little pep and a change of a scenario, Professor Rao, it's all yours. Take over.
Thank you so much. First of all, immense thanks to Moin for allowing us to indulge for 2 hours, and to everybody there. My first question really not a question, a thought to Manav, is tell us something about this Earth, A-R-T-H, Earth, I've been reading so much about you. Can you just explain that a bit once, Manav?
So, Earth is about, seeking truth, small truths and larger meanings of life. And this is a concept which has been a brainchild for almost now more than 2.5 decades. And you see, if we can recognize the power of these small truths of nature, and we can seek the larger meaning of cosmic intelligence, and then we can engage with each other, with between cultures, between people. I think that would be a very holistic and organic engagement. And I've tried to do that as Earth also meaning, in Hindi, Earth is meaning.
Meaning, correct.
In the Devanagari script. And Earth is also in English pronounced as E-A-R-T-H, as Earth. So, and if you expand Earth, it is art for Earth. So, the entire philosophy was to mingle these three triangular, contexts and create an engagement for social change, for public opinion, and for as a movement, which brings together different thought processes and generates dialogues for a future which is more, sensitive to neglected aspects, to aspects which we are forgetting. Because if we go into the Vedic philosophy, if we go into ancient practices, as some of the panelists brought out so beautifully, if we go into nature, we see how beautifully the entire civilizations were blossoming. But now we are turning more and more consumerist, and we are only looking at crass commercial kind of perspectives. So we need to give more weightage and support such projects. For instance, the kind of work that I'm doing, in India, it's very difficult to do this kind of work. Funding is a major issue. So if large architectural enterprises like the wonderful organization that we have two eminent panelists from, if organizations like this support such public art, and encourage such dialogues and collaborate, then there are endless possibilities that we can jointly do in terms of creating a movement which brings about change.
Great. Thank you so much. And I have a couple of quick questions, then we can start talking. One, now I go straight to Ram Lakshmi. Ram Lakshmi, what was the reaction of people when you did that farmhouse in a very unconventional manner? How did people around react, the client react?
That's right. It's an interesting question you ask. Actually, we did have, we did not show images of the projects, and we had a sort of get together over there, and we realized actually people are nuanced enough to experience architecture if you allow them to. So once they moved about the spaces, they could experience that you don't need blinding light in this context, you don't need heat pollution in this context, and how it operates, I think it gets to them. We kind of underestimate people's ability to experience architecture, because in a way we have created a kind of architectural pornography, if you will. Like we see about food culture, it's so image centric rather than well-being centric. So I think this was a huge learning even for us, not to undermine a client's ability to be perceptive.
Excellent, excellent. Suneet, can I go to Christine once? Christine, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, Christine, I love this word nest and rest. Can you just say something about it? It sounded so interesting,
So that's really part of the idea of finding peace within the architecture that we create, and finding places where you can come within, go inside to your most peaceful space and think about things in a new way. And I think if you look at all of the concepts of wellness, and we go to that mind concept, we're always so busy thinking and creating, and we get very busy in our minds. Through that peacefulness, finding home, finding peace, it actually has been proven scientifically that we can get closer into flow, we can be at our most creative, and that we can actually reach our potential with more ease. And so those are some of the principles of that mental and physical well-being that are critical as we design wellness architecture.
Great. Thank you so much. Sunit, back to you.
Oh, well, it's actually, I mean, it's been a very, very enthralling session, I must say. I mean, the very definition of sustainability nomina, to be honest, very quickly, if I just sum it up, we always get so technical when we are talking about sustainability, etc., well-being also. But this was one of the few sessions, at least for me, that I have attended, that there was so much of genuine sort of a pulse that was automatically, spontaneously it came across. And that is what I think Christian was talking about, all about, that communities have, people have to, professionals have to, everybody also has to. Ramalakshmi brought it out beautifully, that don't underestimate the client, don't underestimate people, they know what they want, involve them, and that is how a true well-being emerges, you know. So I think it's been a very fruitful session. There would be, I'm sure, so many questions, but as we were told, 8 o'clock was our deadline. As it is 2 hours. So I would once again take this opportunity to thank everybody, the panelists, who have given their time and some very thought-provoking thoughts and basics, which probably we off and on in our rigmaroles of life forget, you know. So thank you so much, everybody, and thank you so much to the audience also, a very patient audience. And I still see there's so much of numbers which one can see on the screen. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, GSSS, IIA, and everybody else.
I request Mr. Somshekhar to Chinmay, you can please.
Yeah. So as we're in the end of this interactive session, I would request the chairman of IGBC Mysore Center, Mr. M.G. Somshekhar, to propose the vote of thanks. Yes, sir. You can go on.
You will please unmute yourself.
Yeah. Am I audible?
Yes.
Good evening, everybody. I would like to extend my sincere thanks, first of all, to all the participants, in spite of overrun of the time for almost 2 hours, as against 1 hour we planned. They have been with us in a large number. I thank each and everyone for involving and participating in this webinar. And further, I would like to thank all our panelists. The time was just insufficient for each one of you to express whatever experience and the work you have done. And we have given you a very short time, but still you have done justice for the whole webinar in putting it in just 10 minutes, the lifetime experiences you have in sharing with the participants and all the panelists. Thank you very much. Time is running out. We are already late. I may not be able to take each and everyone's name and thank personally, but again, I would like to thank all the panelists on behalf of Indian Green Building Council and on behalf of Indian Institute of Architects. Thank you very much. And further, I would like to thank the chairman of the local center, Sudhindra, for joining hands with Indian Green Building Council and trying to make this event a very successful event. Last but not the least, the people who have really supported us in seeing that this event becomes very successful and meaningful. Architect Chinmay, who coordinated the whole program. I would like to thank you, Numita Nagendra, and last but not the least, Muin Harris, who have been very patiently supporting us almost for 2 hours in spite of the time running out. So you have been a wonderful support. Thank you, Harris. And I would like to conclude thanking everybody once again, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you, Moin. Thank you, all of you.
Thank you, sir.
And
Thank you.
a very good night to, a very good evening and good night to everybody.
Good night.
Everyone.
Thank you. Great for
Good night, everyone.
and to all the wonderful participants who made this lovely.
Yes. We had participation today, sir. Thanks to you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sudhindra. Thank you so much.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a
Ken.
safe day ahead, day and night,
And year ahead.
and the future.
and the future.
Okay, good night. I end the session.